Okay, and welcome to Midnight ISO, my F1 review of F1 in 2020. So, on the cusp of the 2021 season, I thought, it's about time, okay, just in time, to review the previous season. So, simply put, last year started rather lately in July, thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, where just minutes before FP1 in Australia was due to take place, the race weekend was cancelled, and obviously subsequently most of the following races. Now, we ended up visiting a lot of tracks that we never thought we would, or at least again. So, Imola, Nürburgring Grand Prix version, Portimao, and Mugello. But it made for obviously, and Turkey. I must have forgot Turkey. I must have missed that gem of a race. But simply put, it was a very mixed up year. But the order was very not mixed up, at least to begin with. So, let's have a look. Let's get started straight away, shall we? This team, oh yeah, they basically ran away with it. Simple as that, really. Hamilton went to his 7th title. Mercedes went to their 7th title in a row as well. And Hamilton, well, he could have missed out the last 5 Grand Prix and still won the championship. In fact, he did miss one at Sakir, thanks to COVID-19, and he still won the championship very handily. Bottas proved he's fast, but basically still a solid number 2 driver. Now, the first thing you can see under there is, second to bottom, is a DR rank. Those who race on Gran Turismo will understand what a DR rank is. Basically, it's an algorithmic system where I've placed about 30% or so of the weekend's volume, shall we say, and 70% of it from the race, mushed them all together, put them through a little bit of a formula, and it basically spits out a rank. Basically, throughout the whole year, Hamilton, he ended up first. I mean, quite obviously, it's his 7th title. That drive alone in Turkey proved of how much of a good champion that he was. There's 2 races in the year where he probably should have won but didn't, and that was the Eiffel Grand Prix, which is the Nürburgring, where he did a bit of an illegal pit start, well, a warm-up start, shall we say, in the wrong place, just outside the pit lane. And, yeah, looking back at it, watching Drive to Survive, you can see why he got a penalty for that one. And the other race was Monza, when, again, in the pit lane, he pitted despite having the pit lane closed, which netted him a drive-through penalty. Or was it a pit stop? 10-second stop. Doesn't matter, netted him a penalty. And he ended up having to fight his way back through the order, to which that is the only race where Alfa Tauri have managed to win a race, but we will get there. But the all-conquering Mercedes team, with their DAS system, netted themselves 13 wins, 25 podiums, 15 poles, and a bunch of fastest laps while we're at it. So, they basically ran away with the year. If it wasn't for a couple of infringements, they probably would have netted another couple of wins, and Hamilton could have taken half the season off. So, that then takes us to Ferrari, whom, shall we just say, thanks to the back end of 2019, of them running an illegal power unit, at least that's the hearsay, but due to under-counter agreement with the FIA, were allowed to disclose their engine inner workings without fear of penalty, were left with an engine power unit that was a little bit underpowered. As you can see from the results, well, basically, have a look at it. That's where they ended up. Now, despite Vettel being a 4-time world champion, had 1 podium all year and basically did not much else, despite obviously being taken out in I think it was the Styrian Grand Prix by his teammate Leclerc. So, the DR rank for these two, well, I think it's reflective of the year. Vettel was severely underperforming, just thanks to being dropped before the year even started by Ferrari. Leclerc proved his speed, but invariably ended up off the track. So, their performances, their DR rank is a reflection of that. Despite being quick in parts, the pair of them massively underperformed, in my opinion. Red Bull, the only team to consistently take the fight to Mercedes. Verstappen, I believe, top 3 drivers in the sport very easily. On his day, number 1. And on his day, he disappear out the front and go. Only the 2 wins this year for him, though. But on the podium, more often than not, stole a podium at the end of the year. Handful of fastest laps, but sadly, well, there was 3 races in Italy this year, and he never managed to finish one of them. So, thanks to reliability, a couple of ill-timed little nudges, or the odd crash, led him only finishing 3rd behind Bottas. Who would be worth saying at this point that Bottas underperformed this year, but did his job as a number 2. Now, Albon, one of the chief disappointments of this year, despite showing flashes of brilliance, overtaking in places that you'd never ever see, 2 podiums in a race-winning car, often being lapped by Verstappen. It's just not sustainable for a team like Red Bull. So, a DR rank of 16th out of 21 drivers, I'm including Hulkenberg for that wants to know, is very reflective of his year. Good couple of moments, but again, massively underperforming. So, McLaren. To me, this was a very positive story for the sport. After being lost in the wilderness with Honda and, well, Alonso and whatnot, they continued their revival with the Renault power unit and the bromance pairing of Norris and Sainz, who performed very admirably and netted the highest points total since 2014. Now, sadly, no wins, but a pair of podiums and a handful of fastest laps really showed the pace that they've found in that car, and they managed to come away with a manufacturer position of 3rd for the first time again since, must have been 2012. So, a very positive upward trend for McLaren. Sadly, not much more to say about it other than that. They were there or thereabouts all year round, 3rd or 4th fastest car consistently, and it's that consistency that they have been missing in previous years. Well, that and speed, but it's so good to see McLaren on the way up, and in 2021, I believe this will be the team to watch. Which takes us to Renault. Well, 2nd year of Ricciardo's contract did finally net that podium for the team, but it was always a little bit constantly underwhelming. It was always outdone by someone, be it Racing Point, McLaren, or occasionally Ferrari, or even AlphaTauri. Ricciardo did amazingly well to get the handful of points that he did, and I think it is a testament to his skill. But sadly, the car just didn't have the outright pace, which I believe, as you'll find out later on, is the reason why he ended up transferring to McLaren for this year coming. Ocon, a return to the sport after a year out after being dumped out thanks to Force India / Racing Point, and those ongoing contract issues that, you'll find out haven't gone away with Racing Point. And he didn't have the best of years. He came on strong towards the end, but patchy, and suffered a lot from reliability. There isn't much more to say about Renault, but that does take us to the more interesting story of the year. Racing Point, the pink Mercedes. As soon as it broke cover in testing in 2020, we could see It was going to be an interesting year for them. Now, as soon as the on-track action started, some claims from certain teams, aka Red Bull, and, well, McLaren, Renault, basically anyone that wasn't a Mercedes, went up instantly. And they ended up being fined and losing 15 championship constructor points off their total, which in the end did cost them third in the Constructors' Championship, as you can see there, by the narrowest of margins. And, oh, I've made a mistake. Oh, hang on. There you go. And these two, Perez proved to me to be the, basically, severely underrated. He was constantly outperforming the car, and even come home with a win in Sakir after the Russell and Bottas Mercedes fluff up. So, if it wasn't for a couple of DNFs, poor strategy by the pink team, he would have definitely come away with at least a couple more podiums, and possibly even third in the championship, chasing down Max Verstappen, just from poor reliability and, well, the team not doing what they should be doing sometimes. Stroll, again, flash of the brilliance, a pole in Turkey of all places, in such difficult circumstances in the wet, is where he always seems to shine. However, was so up and down in the second half of the year, blamed it on contracting COVID-19, and just barely, he didn't really shine at all, other than that one moment in Turkey. But again, snapped up a couple of podiums in somewhat fortunate circumstances. Now, it's worth mentioning that there is one driver here that isn't mentioned, and that is our Nico Hulkenberg, who deputised for Perez in the two British or 70th anniversary events, and despite not being able to start the first one, qualified amazingly, and then in the second event brought the car home for a good handful of points, despite, again, being drafted in at the last minute. And then later on in the year, when Stroll was off for the race, thanks to COVID-19, he jumped in the car the very last minute possible, and, okay, sadly, was knocked out in Q1, but moved up in the race to pick up a handful of points. So, it is a little bit criminal that this man is out of a drive, but he did show his class. However, that dream for him getting his podium, I don't believe is going to happen anymore, unfortunately. That takes us on to AlphaTauri. A little bit of a mystery of two halves for both of these drivers. Kvyat started poorly, got better towards the end. Gasly started well, and after his win, believe it or not, in Monza, again, very fortuitous, kind of didn't really hear from him again after that. So it is reflected a little bit in their DR ranks to be 14th and 9th respectively. I think Gasly had a strong year. Kvyat was always treading on ice regarding his F1 future, and he's been a little bit vocal towards Red Bull, and I'm not surprised he's been dumped out of the sport a little bit. But AlphaTauri came away with a win which is beyond their wildest dreams of starting the year. So well done to them, but again, fortuitous. So that takes us to Alfa Romeo. Unfortunately saddled with the Ferrari power unit, which, as you can see from the points, no wins, podiums, or poles or fastest laps, led to probably one of the slowest cars that the old Sauber unit has ever been saddled with. Personally, Raikkonen, he showed his class, particularly at Portimao, I believe it was, where he went from the back of the grid to chasing down Hamilton at the end of the first lap. So he showed his class. The fact he has one title to his name is not surprising, given the fact he's always been a little bit up and down. But he's not being beaten by drivers half of his age, and he's constantly getting the best out of the car. So when people say he should retire, well, until Giovinazzi can beat him, or whoever's in the second seat, I think he deserves to stay around. And he loves doing it as a hobby, and it's amazing to see the man in his 40s still driving the sport to pretty damn good level. Giovinazzi himself, he had a mixed bag of results. Sometimes he showed he was quicker than Raikkonen, sometimes just close. I mean, that was good enough. But again, erratic, involved in too many incidents, too many DNFs, and yeah, he only beats Raikkonen on championship position due to getting the points earlier in the year, which I believe was a very high attrition race. So he almost argue he picked them up with a little bit of luck. So that takes us on to Williams. Now, I'm going to speak about Russell and then the team. Russell, his points there and his fastest lap were deputising for Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. He was incredibly unlucky not to come away with a win that weekend. If it wasn't for a fluffed pit stop and then an unfortunate puncture. So, unfortunately, that wasn't really covered on Drive to Survive. And that itself is a bit of a travesty. But he scored some points, if not for Williams, sadly. And that takes us on to his DR rank. He always outperformed that car in qualifying. However, got tangled up in too many incidents. And obviously, as you can see, finished 18th in the championship, thanks to only picking up a handful of points. Even finished behind the Alfa Romeos. It's worth just speaking about the team quickly. It's the last year that we will see the Williams family in the sport, at least for the future. It was a shame to see them go, but they had to do what they had to do and sell up to Dalton Capital to bring the team into the 21st century and move it forwards. But that does bring us on to Latifi, who is, by a lot of thoughts, he is generally thought of as a paid driver. He brings a lot of money into the sport, and it's arguable if he's even the quality enough to be there. He brought it home more often than not, finished 11th in the first race of the year, so nearly scored points, which is actually more than what Russell did. But, as you can see, basically spent most of the race at the back of the grid, every single race. Now that does bring us on to the one team which I've been saving. Following the disaster with Rich Energy the year before, Haas left with an underdeveloped car, an old car, a slow car, with the Ferrari power engine, with Magnussen and... Oh, is he gone? Hold that thought. Let's bring him out. There he is. Oh, wait, hang on. There he is. Grosjean. I have to speak about this first before I even speak about the team in reality. The crash that he survived in Bahrain was absolutely amazing. I can only imagine Niki Lauda himself would be looking down and smiling. To get out of that wreck, that fireball, after 30 seconds is absolutely incredible and a testament to how strong the cars are built, how much research the FIA have done since Jules Bianchi's crash in 2014. The halo definitely saved him as he went through the barrier. I don't think that's in question. And the improved overalls meant he got away with, okay, major burns to his hands and feet, but, crucially, alive. It is absolutely amazing that Grosjean is able to still be with us and looking to go racing in America with the Indy cars. However, that does bring us back to the Haas team itself, surviving on a knife edge financially and picking up 2-point finishes all year. It is hard to see the team which did so well in 2018, I think picking up 5th in the championship, now languishing back second to last. Sadly, there were a lot of DNFs for the pair of them, and the driver rank is reflective of how well I think they drove in also a very poor car. Grosjean was constantly being talked about as an erratic driver, particularly at the two Silverstones. and Magnussen was always involved in incidents one way or the other, even over the past couple of years colliding with each other. So it's not a surprise that the pair of them are out of the sport. However, I do think Magnussen is young enough to go away for a year or two and potentially come back. Sadly, I've been calling for Grosjean's removal from the sport for a couple of years, and I think this year was a sign that he really should hang up that helmet from Formula 1 and go. But don't misunderstand me. I think it is great that he is in good health and survived that crash. However, since those days at the Lotus team where he picked up podiums, he has not really done well since. Too many collisions, too many incidents, and unfortunately the Bahrain crash highlighted this. And if you look closely, he caused his own crash. That's one thing that's not been talked about nearly enough. So, that brings us on to the Drivers' Championship. As you can clearly see, Hamilton ran away with it. He could have taken 4 races off. In fact, did take 1 off for having COVID-19 in Sakir. Shouldn't have been back for Abu Dhabi. He was already champion by then by, well, a month or two, frankly. Verstappen almost chased down second place, but thanks to poor reliability, ended up sadly 1 place lower than what I think he deserved. Perez, definite class of the rest of the field, along with Ricciardo. The pair of them really showed their mettle throughout the year, and Perez really did deserve to be higher up, really, in terms of points, but again, thanks to the team decisions, it's not that surprising that the team kind of fluffed it a little bit for him. Sadly, there's a couple of disappointments this year. Leclerc, Albon, and Vettel in particular. Actually, even Bottas, when you think about it, in relation to his tally to Hamilton, it is not surprising that he ended up that far behind Hamilton, given his effective number 2 status. But the other 3, Leclerc, Albon, and Vettel, all performed very poorly for the car that they were in. A couple of standouts, Perez, Hulkenberg. Well, yes, really. Norris and Sainz did bloody well for the machinery, and it was really good to see the McLaren boys on the way up again. So we've already had a brief look at this. Mercedes ran away with it. Red Bull, solid second. McLaren stole third, and if it wasn't for the fine and the lost points from Racing Point, they should have had third, despite potentially having a slightly illegal concept of a car. Renault did very well, solid. Ferrari, one of the worst seasons they've had in many a year. AlphaTauri, and I was surprised at this to be behind Ferrari at the end of the year, given the fact they had a win. But I think it showed their underlying pace problem. They were always on the fringes of the top 8 to 10, and only ever picked up handfuls of points, which is steady, but that's it. But it's worth mentioning here that, again, back with Ferrari, Vettel was a real situation for Ferrari. He didn't turn up to the races all year, with the exception of Turkey. But you can clearly see, going back to Silverstone, the 70th anniversary, the Ferrari-powered teams of, well, Ferrari, Alfa Romeo and Haas massively suffered from even the year before. You can see how much pace that team has lost. It's worth mentioning that Red Bull on this one had a very underwhelming performance from Albon in this one, and even then, they're still miles ahead of Ferrari. And this is only relative performance to the year before. So, okay, on to 2021. What's this year going to bring us? Okay, so, simply put, this is filmed after the Bahrain qualifying. However, points are won on a Sunday, and the whole year is yet to come. So we've only had one fast session, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens the rest of the year. So, here we have the drivers that are changing teams. We have, from left to right, Perez, Ricciardo, Sainz, and Vettel. So, Perez, really, really lucky to get a Red Bull seat if it wasn't for underperforming Albon last year. But again, for 2020, it's worth mentioning that Perez, despite having ongoing contractual issues and then eventually being replaced by Vettel, performed amazingly all year, picked up a win, and really proved his worth. Ricciardo, it's always exciting to get nearer the front, and I cannot wait to see him in a Mercedes-powered Mclaren push the top teams harder. It's going to be great to see Ricciardo pick up some podiums with a little bit of luck, and in 2022 challenge, I hope, for wins. Sainz moving from McLaren to Ferrari, I'm betting he's a little bit regretful of choosing Ferrari when he has. However, it is my understanding that Mick Schumacher will be going to Ferrari when he's up to speed. So for Sainz, it is damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you want to go and race Ferrari, this is his opportunity. He has to prove his worth this year and next year against a Leclerc with a very long contract, and hopefully he can extract the most performance out of that Ferrari and hopefully pick up some more podiums. But it would look like he's transferred down to a Ferrari that are in trouble. And Vettel, this year is going to be very much make or break for him. After an extremely poor 2020, where he ranked bottom of my pile most days, with the exception of Turkey in that really sodden race with the really weird track circumstances. One good performance last year. It's amazing to me that he's actually still in the sport somewhat. However, this year, 2021 is make or break for him. If he gets beaten by Stroll handily, I won't be too surprised if he is no longer in the sport come 2022 or 2023. So that takes us on to the new drivers. Okay, Yuki Tsunoda on the left, a Formula 2 race winner, multiple race winner, came on really strong towards the end of the year and narrowly missed out on the title actually. Really proved that the Red Bull Young Driver Program is working, which is a good sign from me. And yes, does he deserve to be here this year? I personally think he could have done with another year in F2, perhaps pick up the title, be more prepared for Formula 1 next year and the new regulations. However, Red Bull want to bed in their drivers a lot younger than other teams and want them to be ready for the new cars. Now, the middle driver, you may recognise or may see a familiarity with a certain Michael Schumacher, because that is Mick Schumacher, Michael's son. The Formula 2 champion from 2020 has been promoted up into the Haas F1 team. Now, that's a little bit of a mixed bag for me, because seeing the Schumacher name, which is probably going to be circulating at the back of the track for the entire year, is, quite frankly, a little bit of a letdown. I was hoping for him to be somewhere in a midfield team and showcase his talent. However, this is going to be a good way for Haas to get some money into their team, because let's face it, having a Schumacher on your branding is a great way to print money. And hopefully the 2022 car, which they are focusing most of their resources on, will be a cracker. So good luck to Mick Schumacher. Hope he beds in well this year, and we'll see more of him next year. Now, the other young driver, returning driver, Fernando Alonso, the double world champion from 2005-2006, has had a couple of years out of sport and is returning with the formerly Renault, the Enstone grouping, for Alpine alongside Ocon. Now, for these two, whoever comes out on top at the end of the second year, well, the other one is, in my view, going to be leading the sport. Because if Fernando handily beats Ocon, that is going to destroy his confidence. If Ocon is beaten by Alonso, he may just turn around and go, okay, it was nice coming back, see you guys later. And then retire off again like Michael Schumacher did in, I think it was 2013. But it's nice to see Alonso back in the sport. It's going to be hilarious to see all of his radio messages and see what shenanigans he gets up to. Particularly since Cyril Abiteboul has left the group. So, who's going to be running that team? Well, nobody knows. And that's it for all of the new drivers and changes. Oh, wait, it's not. Oh, I don't want to talk about him. Oh, alright. The other Haas driver. Son of a Russian billionaire, which has, frankly, plastered a Russian flag all over the Haas team, which for those who've ever studied the Cold War, seeing an American team with a Russian flag all over it, okay, and inverted air quotes, isn't a Russian flag. Yeah. This situation and his personal life, how this man has made it into Formula One, well, it's money, frankly. I hope he has the skills to back it up. I know very little about him, but we shall see what he's capable of. And I hope that means on the track and not off it. So, well, that really leaves us here, looking forwards to the new F1 season. Simply put, this has been my F1 Midnight ISO Formula 1 production. Now, I'm really enthusiastic to see what this year brings. I mean, it is a lot closer in qualifying between the 3rd to, say, 15th, give or take, or 3rd to 10th at least, to see what is going to happen this year. I think there's going to be a lot of close racing. But the Mercedes look like they're on the back foot, which is probably a good thing for those that don't want to see a Mercedes Lewis Hamilton dominance. We might, in fact, see the first real on-track battle between Verstappen and Hamilton. And I am personally really looking forward to this. I could easily see it being the last season for potentially Bottas and Hamilton at that team. And then looking forward to the year after, because this year is very much a stopgap for 2022, given the cost cap regulations, the development regulations, and the contracts to the drivers that will all be up. 2022 is going to be where it's at, but for now, 2021 is going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of posturing, a lot of manoeuvring behind the scenes. Hopefully, a lot more of on-track action too. It's going to be great to see what happens at the front. Great to see what particularly Mclaren get up to, and the renewal of Aston Martin as a brand in Formula 1. So many little stories going on. New drivers, new teams, returning drivers. Hopefully a lot of shenanigans. We shall see. Well, thank you for watching. This has been a My Formula 1 production. Thank you for watching. Have a nice one.